What's up, guys? It's been a while since I've been down here. I genuinely have not filmed a video, and it's got to be about a month now. Just stuff's been busy, but I don't need to talk about it much. Feels weird to be down here, even though this is my house, which is kind of odd, but I'm not going to waste any of your time with my story and what I've been doing the last month. I'm going to waste your time with a mock draft because that's obviously what you clicked here for. So I'm going to get straight into the mock draft. I'm only doing my top 20 picks because I kind of chose to film this on the fly. Like, I woke up today and I was like, I kind of want to do a mock draft. So here I am doing a mock draft, wearing my favorite jersey that I own, and let's get straight into it. Starting off with the first overall pick. And the first overall pick has a lot of controversy to it because there's people that think Shane Wright should be drafted first. There's people that think Slafkovsky could be drafted first. And there's even some idea coming up now that Logan Cooley could potentially be drafted first, which I think is definitely possible. But at the end of the day, I just don't see a way that the Montreal Canadiens, first overall, do not draft centerman from the OHL, Shane Wright. As much as I don't think he has as high of a ceiling as maybe a player like Slafkovsky and Cooley, and I know that me saying that made a lot of you angry right there. I know that it did. But I still think Shane Wright is probably a safe pick, one of the safer picks, and he definitely still could develop into the star player that he was meant to be when he got that, what was it called? He was allowed to play in the OHL at a younger age. Exceptional status, when he got exceptional status. And I think part of the reason he's been dropping so low to like second and third or not being seen as the first overall pick anymore is because at the start of the season, everybody expected to see greatness. When you see a guy with exceptional status, you expect to see, wow, this kid, he stands out from everybody else. And really, he's just been good, not great. So I definitely think that hurts what people have been seeing him as, like, a lot. And I think that's me as well, because I do think Slafkovsky, I like him more. And I'll get to him in a bit, but Shane Wright, still a very solid player, and I just don't see a way that Montreal does not draft him first overall. But now moving on to the number 2 pick. In number 2, we have New Jersey, and if Shane Wright's drafted first, then I see New Jersey Devils at second overall drafting left winger from the Liga, Juraj Slafkovsky. Now, before I continue on, I'd like to say that if Juraj Slafkovsky is drafted first, I think New Jersey trades this pick because just think of the amount of stuff you could get for Shane Wright. But Juraj Slafkovsky, a tall guy, a big dude, and the thing is, at a young age, he already knows how to use his size. And he skates very well for a person that is like as big as him. Like, not great, his skating is definitely probably one of his things he needs to work on, but it's more impressive than I would expect for a guy his size, as well as his skills and stick handling are also more impressive than I would expect for a guy his size. And what I also like about him, I said he knows how to use his size, and that's coming up a lot. He's a big dude, and he's physical, and that's something you don't see often. Not a lot of physical players left. Him being big and physical, that also adds a lot, a power forward, and I think New Jersey could use him a lot on that wing, and who knows, maybe he could even end up playing with Jack Hughes, and I do see him as probably the most NHL-ready player in this draft, because we see him in the World Championships lighting up, we see him in the Olympic Games lighting him up, and now he's playing in Slovakia like a men's league, and yeah, he's doing pretty good. 10 games, 7 goals, 1 assist for 8 points. It's like an international thing, and he's doing pretty good in that. The only league he didn't light up was the Liga, and people said his play got better throughout, and one of the reasons that he didn't light up the Liga, people say, is because his team wasn't very good. I don't know if that's true or not, didn't fact check that, probably should have, but either way, hopefully this isn't like another situation like Capo Caco was, where he did very good in the World Championships and stuff and kind of bust. But I feel like Juraj Slafkovsky has more translatable skills to the NHL than Caco did, and I expect him to one day be a very good power forward top six player. But now moving on to the Arizona Coyotes, and at the start I said there were kind of 3 players. Everybody had that consensus on the top 3 players in this draft, and yes, I do feel the same way. I see no way that at this point Arizona does not draft centerman from the USHL, Logan Cooley. And Logan Cooley, really, there's not much to say because he's just a really skilled, really fast forward who I think will be a good skilled forward in the NHL. He's got a great transition game, and he puts up a lot of points in the USHL. And yeah, you know, his size, it's a little under, but overall, I still think he will be a very good NHL player, and Arizona trying to build up that team. They got Dylan Guenther coming up, and one day if they can get Logan Cooley up, then you already got a pretty good line there with Guenther, Cooley. But now moving on to number 4, in the Seattle Kraken. In the Seattle Kraken, I would most likely expect them to take a defenseman here, because Seattle, they drafted Matthew Beniers last year. Really, their whole team kind of needs work with an expansion team. They don't have that star yet. Hopefully Matthew Beniers will be, but I do think they need that great defense. And that defense I think they draft, that goes first defenseman off the board, is Simon Nemec. And I might have messed up that name. I'm sorry if I messed up names on this. There's a lot of people that are from different countries, and I don't know how to pronounce the C's in that country, or whatever, the S's, or the little like apostrophes over the letters. Like, who knows how to do those? Nobody really knows how to do those. But Simon Nemec, in 39 games this year in the Slovakia League, 1 goal, 25 points for 26 assists, and he just has such a good passing game, such a good transition game, and he's also pretty good defensively. He's just one of the best, probably the best in my opinion, all-around defenseman in this draft. And in the World Championships, he went over there, played very solid, and there's some controversy between who's first, him or Jiricek. I do see Nemec as the best defenseman and the one with the most offensive potential out of the two, and I expect him to one day definitely be a very good two-way defenseman for Seattle, which is something they do desperately need right now. Obviously, he probably won't be ready for a couple more years, but I do see him as the best defenseman in the draft still. But now moving on to the 5th overall pick, and drafting 5th overall is the Philadelphia Flyers. And I see the Philadelphia Flyers going with a guy who's dropped a little bit, but I still have him pretty high, and that is centerman from the WHL, Matthew Savoie. Matthew Savoie in 63 games in the WHL, 35 goals, 55 assists for 90 points, and just very solid. His offensive production did slow down throughout the year, but he's still a very good power play forward, and I definitely probably see him going to the wing if he does end up in the NHL, probably being like a top 6 winger power play guy. And the one reason I could see him slipping, the one reason is his size. He is small. He's 5'9", so not big at all. He doesn't weigh a lot, and small dudes tend to fall a bit in the draft, so I could see that happening with Matthew Savoie. But overall, I think that if he falls too much, it would be a mistake for a lot of teams ahead, and I think Philadelphia taking a shot at Matthew Savoie at number 5 could have a huge payoff for them in the future. But now moving on to the Columbus Blue Jackets, who actually have Chicago Blackhawks' current pick, which is kind of funny because there's rumors of Columbus going after DeBrincat, and I think this pick would be involved, so Chicago would get their own pick back and some stuff for DeBrincat, which is pretty interesting. I wouldn't trade DeBrincat if I was them, but that's a whole topic for another video. But Columbus at number 6, they stacked up on centers last year, and at this point, I just don't see a way that they don't draft defenseman from the Czechia League, David Jiricek. And David Jiricek is a defenseman who kind of throughout the year I've warmed up to a bit, because at the start of the year I was like, okay, you know, I don't see the offensive potential that everybody's seeing. I don't see like all this. I figured he was like a top 15 pick, but not a top 5. But again, as the year's gone on, I've warmed up to him. I've got to see him play a bit more, and yeah, I do like him. I don't think he's good as Nemec. I don't think he has the offensive potential that Nemec does, and I probably butchered that name like 5 times. I'll keep saying it. But Jiricek, I just like the physicality that he brings. Obviously, he injured his leg. He has not looked quite the same since, but I'm sure that'll be fine. It's not too much of a concern. He still looks very good. And looking at his international stats, where he's been putting up 7 points in 17 games, and just the stats in the Czechia, I do think one day he could be probably a top 4 defenseman. More defensive though, maybe not offensive numbers, like 30 points a year, maybe 40. I just don't see him being an offensive stud, but still a very good defenseman. But now moving on to number 7, and the 7 pick goes to the Ottawa Senators. And Ottawa, I feel like, needs a defenseman in their pool. They have a lot of good young forward talent that they have, but they don't have that young defenseman upcoming. Oh wait, they have Jake Sanderson. Alright, well, I do still have them drafting a defenseman. I'm not going to redo all this because I remembered that. But at number 7, I have Ottawa drafting defenseman Denton Mateychuk. And Denton Mateychuk in the WHL this season put up some very good point numbers, a lot of goals, and I just think he definitely could have the best offensive potential in this draft. Like Simon Nemec, probably best all around. Jiricek, best defensive maybe, but I feel like Mateychuk might have the best offensive potential in this draft. He is a little undersized for a defenseman. A lot of teams like their defense being over 6 foot tall. 5'11" is pretty close, and he's still very solid. Puts up great numbers, so I don't think that that'll turn teams off too much. And honestly, Ottawa, a team that's high-flying, young, fast, scores a lot of goals, I think Mateychuk could add a lot to that roster. But now moving on to number 8, the Detroit Red Wings. And I'm pretty sure the Red Wings are one of those teams that do like their Swedes. You know, they draft a lot of people from Europe, maybe not just Sweden, but Europe and stuff. And I see them continuing this pattern, drafting right winger from the Liga, Joakim Kemell. And Kemell is really an interesting case. It's like Jiricek warmed up to me throughout the year. Kemmell's done nothing but slowly drop every time I've done a mock draft. He started at number 2, and he's at 8 now, and I could have had him lower, debatably. But in 39 games, he put up 23 points, and the thing about that is at the start of the year, it was like 15 points, 15 games. He was stuck at like 18 points forever, for almost like 10 games, I didn't see his points go up once. But then he kind of got up to 23 at the end, so maybe he got a little bit better. But it's going to be interesting to see how he pans out in the NHL and if he can find that game that he showed at the start of the season this year. But now moving on to the number 9th pick, and at number 9 is my second favorite team, the Buffalo Sabres, and I see them taking a shot at center or left winger, probably left winger at the NHL level, I'd guess, just his play style, Gauthier. And Gauthier, in 76 games, put up 53 goals, so yes, he does know how to score goals pretty well, 40 assists and 93 points. And the reason I think he actually could go higher than this, because I think he could, is because of his size. And size is looked at a lot. I think it's looked at too much in the NHL, especially with today's game being more based off of skilled play and transition. But either way, he's 6'3", 201 pounds. He's a big kid, and he knows how to score again. He knows how to score. And with Buffalo building this big team, you got Tage Thompson. Jeff Skinner is old, but he's big. Alex Tuch they traded for, also a massive dude. And I think Gauthier, if they are building this big team, definitely fits in, and he could bring a huge scoring touch that Buffalo will need in the future if they want to be a contending team if they ever want to even make the playoffs, because that seems to be a problem for them. I'd really love them to do it this year. I kind of have some hope. I kind of believe in them. There's just something that makes me believe. I don't know what it is, but I have hope for the first time in a long time. But now moving on to number 10, the Anaheim Ducks, and I just don't see a way Anaheim doesn't draft a defenseman. They have a couple of good defensive prospects, but they have a lot on the offensive end. So the defense that they go with is another one who I think has some great offensive potential in the NHL someday, and that is from the OHL, Pavel Mintyukov. And Mintyukov, in 67 games, has 17 goals, 45 assists for 62 points. He has good size, 6'1", 192 pounds, and really, just really solid overall. There's a few defensive lapses that he has, some positioning problems, but that can be taught as they get older. It's the offensive side of the game that's hard to teach, and he's definitely nailed that down already. And Anaheim, I do think they need that offensive defenseman. They've lost Josh Manson, they've lost Hampus Lindholm. They need some young talent to come in. They need to up that defense, make it stronger, and I think Pavel Mintyukov could be a big part of that future for them, and I just think it would be a great pick for Anaheim at this point. But now moving on to the 11th pick, and drafting at number 11 is the San Jose Sharks, and I think the San Jose Sharks will draft one of my favorite players from this draft, period, Frank Nazar. Frank Nazar, I think, is one of the most underrated players in this draft. I see the skill, I see the speed, I watch the highlights, and I see a potential to be even better than Logan Cooley. And I know that sounds crazy, but I do think Frank Nazar does have that potential, and I find him that intriguing. But I do think he'll drop down to number 11 just because he is a little bit to the smaller side. But I do really like Frank Nazar. The offensive numbers are there. The defense is there. He's just very good all around, and I don't get why he doesn't get as much respect as he does. A lot of people having him at 20 and stuff and 18, but again, I think he's so good, and I think he will be a great player. And San Jose, they probably want to draft a defenseman here, but at this point, I feel like after Anaheim, there's not much defenseman left worth picking at the spot. Maybe Kevin Krasinski, you could argue, but I'm not as high as him as other people are, and I still think Frank Nazar is a very good pick for the Sharks at this point. But now moving on to number 12, and at number 12, I have the Columbus Blue Jackets. Well, I don't have them. They're just drafting there, and with their second pick, I do not see them going for another defenseman. I think that they're going to go for a forward here, and that is Jonathan Lekkerimäki. And Lekkerimäki has really been elite in every league he's been in. He's shown he can score in every league he's been in, whether it be in the Ju-20 National, the SHL, he scored a good amount of goals, the International Junior 18s, kind of a league just in Europe, and then the World Junior 18s, where he also lit that league up, getting 15 points in only 6 games, and 5 of those being goals, so a goal per game. So again, Lekkerimäki, shown he has that scoring touch, shown he can be great, and Columbus has a whole ton of young talent in Kent Johnson, Cole Sillinger. I don't know who else they drafted last year, but he could add a lot to that young core that they're trying to form in the future. But now moving on to the New York Islanders, who are drafting at 13th. And I really just think that the New York Islanders need to add some offensive firepower into their young stars. Obviously, they got Atu Ratu, but other than that, they don't really have much. In fact, they don't have much young talent in a lot of areas, because they've been winning for a good amount. They've been in the conference finals for the last few years. Not this year, obviously, which is why I think this year they add to that offensive firepower. I think that they draft left winger Isaac Howard. And Isaac Howard has really shown that he can be an offensive beast in his league in the USHL this season. I don't think he's seen as one of the top prospects like a Logan Cooley, like a Frank Nazar, because just his play style. He doesn't seem as fast and skilled as them, or as good in transition. But whatever he does right, he's good at positioning, he gets his shots off, and he gets a lot of points. And I think that's something that the Islanders need, is that guy who can just get a ton of points. And I believe Isaac Howard does have that potential. So I see him going at 13th to the Islanders. But now moving on to the 14th pick, and that is the Winnipeg Jets. And the Winnipeg Jets, I think, draft the last defenseman that I have going in the top 20, and some of you probably have going a bit higher, but again, I'm not as high as them as most people are, and that is defenseman Kevin Krasinski. Kevin Krasinski this year, in 67 games, put up 4 goals, 61 assists for 65 points. And the thing here is, there's not a lot of goals, right? Which is fine. That's fine that there's not a lot of goals. But what kind of backs me off of Krasinski is his team is amazing, and yet they have a lot of good forwards on that team who get a lot of points. So maybe Krasinski kind of benefits from playing with them a lot. And I know he had a great playoffs. In fact, I saw one of his games. I actually wasn't that impressed with him. There were a lot of defensive issues, but I know that that's something that kind of comes with Kevin Krasinski because he has that great offense, but the defense is a problem. Obviously, that's something that can be fixed as you get older. You can teach the defensive side easier than you can teach the offensive side of the game, because he's just kind of got that offensive awareness, knows what to do in the offensive zone, and that's great, but I do think he needs to work on the defensive side of things. But Winnipeg drafting him, he could be a great offensive defenseman one day for them. But now moving on to number 15, and Vancouver is the Vancouver Canucks. And in this mock draft, I'm sure they'd love to draft a defenseman, add a defenseman to that kind of weak-ish defense that they have. But ultimately, I just don't see a defenseman that's worthy of getting after all the defensemen that have been drafted at this point. So I think that they kind of go a little off the board, at least for most people, and that is right winger Jagger Firkus. And Jagger Firkus, in 66 games, has 36 goals, 44 assists for 80 points. Very good player in the WHL, and a lot of people have him lower on their mock draft. And I kind of see why people think he's going to go lower, and I think it's because of his weight and his height. He weighs nothing. He's 5'10", 154 pounds. So he weighs nothing, but he's very good. That's the thing. He has so much skill, and he's actually good at like using his shoulder, getting around people despite being small. But if he can find a way to put on some weight while not losing any of that speed, while not losing any of like his agility and all that, then I think that that would benefit him greatly, because he is like a stick right now. Like 5'10", 154, like me and him are pretty close in weight, and I am a stick. So like I think that he might want to fix that just a little bit, but still great player, and Vancouver could end up being a good fit for him one day. But now on to the Buffalo Sabres at number 16, because obviously I have the 2 picks, and there's rumors that they are going to be trading one of them. But if they don't, then with their second pick, I think that they take a shot at center or right winger, plays both, Brad Lambert. Brad Lambert is better at center, but that's besides the point. This season, in 49 games, he played... 49 games. He got 4 goals, 6 assists for only 10 points in the league, and had a massively disappointing season. Because before the season started, it was seen as, okay, he should be a top prospect. He's seen as a top 3, solidified. Kind of like Shane Wright was seen as like this #1 guy, and he still is. But Brad Lambert was also seen as being up there, and he is not. He has dropped a lot. It's kind of like an Ratu situation last year, but not as bad, because I feel like there's more belief in Lambert than there was in Ratu. Like, people see Lambert, and they see the skill that he shows from time to time, and yeah, it's just, I don't know, his team's bad. He's had a lot of snake button moments, a lot of times where I feel like if he just had the right line mates, more could happen. And he's shown me his skill. Like, that's what makes me mad. He's shown me that he can be good. I saw the World Juniors, the World Junior 20s, the couple games he played, he looked great. And again, from time to time in his Liga, he looks great. And Buffalo, this could end up being an absolute steal, and I think whatever team does end up taking a shot at Lambert could have the potential of having an all-star on their team one day. But as of right now, his plays look kind of iffy. He hasn't looked great at the juniors, but I still believe in him, and I'd be happy to have Lambert on our team, especially with the 2 picks that Buffalo does have. But now moving on to number 17, and at number 17 is the Nashville Predators. And the Predators, I'm pretty sure, one of those teams that are also into their Swedes. Kind of like you look at the Canucks, they got the Swedes on there. Maybe, I don't know. But at number 17, I think the Nashville Predators will draft left winger Liam Ohgren. And Liam Ohgren, in 30 games in the G20 National, scored 33 goals. And that's the thing I want to focus on here. He hasn't played much in any other league other than the SHL. And the SHL is kind of hard to read, because in the SHL, he only had 2 points in 25 games. But with players who don't get a lot of points in the SHL, I find it kind of difficult to read, because it might be ice time, their team might not be good, they just might not be getting the opportunity that they should be getting. So who knows, but the June 20 National stats speak for themselves and show me that maybe someday he could have the potential to be a scoring winger on that Nashville Predators lineup. But now moving on to number 18, and drafting number 18 is the Dallas Stars. And Dallas in the past has had a very, very good record with drafting. They drafted Wyatt Johnson and Logan Stankoven last year, who both look like they should be very good. Obviously, they drafted Miro Heiskanen. That was an easy pick. He was great. They drafted Jason Robertson in the second round. That was a steal. Jake Ottinger's looking great. Like, this team knows how to draft. And I think that they could get another steal here at 18, because at 18, I have them drafting center or right winger from the USHL, Rutger McGroarty. And Rutger McGroarty in 79 games has 50 goals, 52 assists for 102 points. So for a guy with that many points in 79 games, why is it that he's dropped so low? Why is it that when you look at the mock drafts, he's always in the mid-20s to late 20s, maybe even the 30s? And I think it's because of his skating. Skating is a huge knock on Rutger McGroarty. He has the skill, the stick handling, good shot, but his skating is definitely behind what it should be. And that's something you can work on. And if he fixes that skating, he definitely could become an elite player like Jason Robertson. Because I feel like Jason Robertson kind of was the same thing. He put up all these great numbers, great stuff, but the skating was a problem. And Rutger McGroarty, that's what it is. He has the size, he has the skill, and yeah, Dallas maybe picks up a steal here in him. But now on to number 19, the recently acquired pick of the Minnesota Wild, because obviously the Fiala trade, I don't know who won that. I mean, Minnesota probably didn't get a lot back, but whatever. Kings did a good job there. But anyway, with this pick, I think the Minnesota Wild will draft a huge riser in this draft. That in fact, he's new on my list right here, and this is centerman Marco Kasper. Marco Kasper in the SHL has put up some solid numbers. In the G20 National, he put up some okay numbers. And honestly, again, the SHL, kind of hard to read, but Marco Kasper just looks like a really solid player. A lot of people have him in their top 10 and their top 15, but like, I think that's a little too high for me. I still think he's a good player, not necessarily good enough to go up there. And yeah, maybe he could. I think Minnesota Wild will end up drafting him at number 19. But ultimately, I see him going around the 20 area, just not top 15. I don't think he's that good, but who knows? Centers tend to rise, and maybe a team's hot on Marco Kasper, so he rises a bit, because honestly, it wouldn't surprise me a bit. But now on to the last pick I have in this entire mock draft, and that is the Washington Capitals at number 20. Sorry I didn't go to 32. Again, this was kind of an on-the-fly thing. I woke up this morning, I said, I want to do a mock draft. I'm going to try to get this out on Wednesday, it is today, hopefully before the draft, obviously, because this would be really awkward if I posted this after the draft. But Washington, I see them drafting right winger from the Slovakia League, Filip Mesar. And Filip Mesar has been really consistent throughout the year. If you look back at other mock drafts I've done, every time he's like 20, 19, 18. I think I might have had him 15 once, I'm not sure. But he's always around that 20 mark, just a really solid forward. Don't necessarily know how much offensive potential is there. I don't think he could be like an elite forward. I just don't see it. But maybe a good third line, middle six kind of player. Maybe top six if he manages to have his development go right. But Washington, yeah, they kind of got a late pick here, number 20, and I don't think you're expecting the world. So Filip Mesar could be a solid player, and this is where I see him going. But thank you guys for watching. If you are still here, this has been my first video in like a month. I feel good, you know, I'm feeling good about it. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, so again, thank you guys for watching, and I'm going to end this video as I did before, like a month ago when I did every video, doing the classic, you know, take the hat off, grab the mic off, and just do it, you know.